Kids, and not my problem plus update. Original post. About a month ago, I found out both of my children were the results of my soon-to-be ex-wife's affairs. I've had a feeling for a while now that both them were not mine. 6 years ago, when my son was born, I was the happiest I had been in my entire life. I had married my best friend. We had a child together, and everything seemed amazing. That was until he started getting older. After a few years, I started to have doubts that he was actually mine. He did not look like my child. The more he started to grow, the more I realized just how different he looked compared to what I would expect a child of mine to look like. I am not petty or paranoid enough to let that alone drive me. It was my war of a wife that really set my alarms off. Whenever she went out, she never went where she said she did. She would have huge holes in her schedule she could never explain to me. She would refuse to allow me to interact with anyone from her workplace. And a close friend of hers accused her of flirting with her so at the time. It did not help that soon after our son was born, her lies started to catch up with her. Still though, I loved her like the fool I was. She told me up and down how much she loved me whenever one of her lies caught up with her. She had convinced me that despite the fact she was a lying and manipulative woman, that she wasn't a lying manipulative whore. Last year, she got pregnant again, and I still held out a small bit of hope that it was mine. But when her daughter was born, it was obvious she was mixed race. I refused to sign the birth certificate, and the paternity test I demanded afterwards proved my suspicions right all along. Neither of them are mine. The day I got those test results were the day I filed for divorce from that whore and walked away from the family I had created. I knew that it would destroy her son's life to see me walk out. Despite my concerns, I was the best dad I could be to him. I loved him with all my heart and put in 110% into being the father he deserved. Now though, when I see him I am filled with disgust. Disgust for my whore of a wife. Disgust with myself for not trusting my instincts. And disgust that the last 6 years on my life have been for nothing. I have been told by multiple people now that I am a monster for leaving my son like this. My ex has tried on multiple occasions, since I moved out to use him to guilt me into getting back with her. She will have him call me at random hours of the night crying and begging for his daddy to come back. The day I moved out, she paraded him into the room as I packed my things to show me how much damage I am doing. In every conversation that he has brought up, both online and off, I am berated and shamed. That despite the fact I am not the boy's biological father, I am his dad. What I have sadly now realized is that, to most, my own feelings mean nothing. My parents are my only supporters through all this, with my own siblings calling me a despicable person for abandoning a child like that. My feelings of betrayal and sadness mean nothing, because a child is involved. I know it is not his fault. I know that the man he called his father for his entire life just walked away. But why am I expected to man up? Why should I have to pretend everything is fine? And I do not feel contempt for this entire situation. Why should I put my own life and feelings aside? I never was the boy's father. I loved him like one and honestly still do. But I would come to hate and contempt him if I had to play that role. Hate myself for not standing up and taking my own life back into my own hands. He is not my child. And even though it is not his fault, he is not my problem anymore. Now for the top of comments before reading the update. This story is crazy. The same thing happened to my dad about 30 years ago. He was married for a bit to a woman, had a son he was sure was his. She later gave birth to a girl, and he was certain that the girl wasn't his. Got a paternity test on both kids, found out both were not his. He tried to keep parenting the boy for a while, but lost touch when his ex completely lost custody of both kids due to drug use, and the kids went with grandparents. Such a crazy story with so much pain. I only heard this from my mom though. My dad has never volunteered this information up himself. It's actually surprisingly common for women to commit paternity fraud. France made it illegal for a man to get a paternity test without the consent of his wife. The official reasoning is very telling. Paternity tests were banned in France 15 years ago. If French customs intercept DNA samples or results in the mail, the perpetrators in theory risk up to a year in prison and a 15,000 euros fine. The French Council of State upheld the law on May 6, saying it did not want to upset the French regime of filiation, and that the intent of lawmakers was to preserve the peace of families. As a child that came from a marital affair, your feelings are valid. My mom was married to this dude we'll call Jack, and they had my sister. Eventually, my mom cheated on Jack with my dad, and got pregnant with me, and Jack didn't find out until I was born, and it was obvious he wasn't my dad. He had basically black hair while my mom has brown, and I was born blonde. He got a DNA test done, and once he found out, he left. He told my sister and my family that he couldn't look at me without being reminded I wasn't his child, and that my mom cheated on him. I was too young to remember them being divorced. I just remember missing him. I don't remember how my sister took it. But I'll say this. I'd rather my mom and Jack get a divorce than them staying together, fueling the fire of a relationship that was drowning in unhappiness and resentment. It was the best choice for everyone in the situation in the long term. Not the a-hole. Thanks for the awards. 3. My dad's situation has always been a place of animosity and apathy in my life, and I'm glad I was able to talk about it here and potentially help someone who has a situation similar to my family's. Be good people. Edit 2. I wanted to add this in case OPCs. The reason it was a place of animosity and apathy was not because of their divorce. It was because I have never had any sort of relationship with my dad, and my mom never told me who he was. It seems like you truly care for these kids, and I very much doubt they will feel the way I did in the future. Edit 3. Yes, everyone, I know how genetics work, and that it would be possible for me to be blonde if Jack was my father. There are other factors that contributed to him eventually getting me tested that combined with the aforementioned that led him there. Please stop trying to give me a biology lesson in the comments. It's appreciated, but not needed. He had basically black hair while my mom has brown, and I was born blonde. Okay, but this is completely normal genetically. Lots of kids are born blonde and go darker later. And 2 dark-haired parents can easily have a light-haired kid if they've got some recessive genes kicking about, which they wouldn't necessarily know. It's the opposite. 2 blonde or ginger parents having a dark-haired baby. That's much rarer. Now for the update. Wow, this post certainly blew up. Guess airing my dirty laundry accomplished something. Anyway, I've seen a few common questions, so I'll just answer them here. 1. Her son knows the truth of why I left. I sat down and told him that I am not his father, and that his mother lied to me and cheated on me. I made it clear I am not mad at him, that it is not his fault this is happening. And no matter what, I will still think he's an amazing kid. 2. Some are saying that I never loved him, or was always looking for a way out. It's hard to convey emotions in a text post like this, and even harder to allow vitriolic hatred towards your whore of a wife decontextualize the last 6 years of your life. You can believe what you want though. 3. I have a lawyer, and I'm not going to be paying child support or alimony. Last though, for those who say I should stay in her son's life and be his father, that's not realistically possible. I do not hate him, but I have been cheated on, lied to, and used by a vile self-centered whore who has now caught her children up in her lies and deceit. He is a casualty of her actions and blameless. However, it can never change the fact of the harsh reality we find ourselves in. I don't hate him. I feel so sad when I think about how he feels. But all I see when I look at him is 6 years of my life I was lied to. 6 years of my life I was used. And 6 long years of built-up doubts and frustrations with a woman who used me. There is no putting aside my hatred to try and be in his life, because the life I lived with him was nothing more than a facade cultivated by his mother. This is the harsh reality I find myself dealing with, and I simply cannot in good faith put myself or him through it anymore. Edit 2. Since I am seeing many armchair lawyers in the comments saying this post is fake on grounds of what I said above, I will not reveal what state I live in, but I am currently going through a fun legal process called disestablishment of paternity. Won't shut up 90% of you who think Google makes you a lawyer, but at least I tried. Edit 3. This is going to be my last edit before I move on from this small little distraction I created for myself. First, I want to thank everyone for their kind words to me, in the comments, the direct messages, and the chat. You've given me a bright day for the first time in a while. I wish I could reply to all of you, but I cannot thank you enough. Secondly, I have noticed many people criticizing the word I used very profusely to describe my soon-to-be ex. I want to just say, the place I am now is one of the darkest I have been in my life. I see nothing but white-hot rage for the woman who ruined my life. Is what I said inappropriate? Is the word I used to describe her dehumanizing and vile? Yes, I will admit that, but I won't apologize for it. What I wrote here today was the truth of the world as it is for me right now. It is the raw, unadulterated stream of consciousness of a flawed man. I do not intend to try and get people to hate women or to push some misogynistic message. about how women are terrible. That is not my goal here, and that is not the message of this post. I understand why people do not like the word I used here, and you know what, I accept that as a valid criticism of what I did here today. I came here today to simply find some outlet for the situation I find myself in, to rant, mourn, and deal with the complex and raw emotions that have torn me apart for the last month, a place where I can freely speak my mind. And you know what? I did that. Today was pretty alright thanks to you guys. Again, to everyone who showed me love and support, thank you from the bottom of my flawed heart. To those who came here disagreeing with me, but showed me respect, thank you as well. After the shame and ridicule I face in my real life, the respect you showed me despite your disagreement was nice. So long, and thanks for all the fish. Story 2. Stiff me on overtime. Cue the long, expensive revenge. This happened in the early 2000s when I joined a startup. We agreed on a salary and no paid overtime and an evaluation in 3 months and then annually, standard stuff mostly. It was a very mediocre salary for the work, but I really liked work itself, which was extremely interesting and challenging. For me, even if the finances were so-so, I felt I'd learn a lot of skills which would be useful in the future. After 3 years and having 10 decent clients and a bunch of clients trialing and money rolling in, the talk turned to back pay and paid overtime plus compensating for past overtime. At that point, around $50,000 in overtime had been accrued, which is a lot. Legally, it couldn't be back pay, so the talk was always of a discretionary bonus. Now at this point, everyone is okay with this, myself included, and this was discussed in writing, via company emails too, so I felt secure and that no bad will was in play. I felt the company should be able to afford the payment. Equally, I happily settle for equity at a discount, which is legally possible there, if cash flow was an issue. The discussions about back pay, possible equity, and now started to drag on, and I was getting irked by this. In the end, I was made an offer of equity, which meant the company valuation was far beyond anything reasonable, in the hundreds of millions, and I'd get a minuscule stake, less than 0.01% of a company with 9 employees and a projected annual turnover of around 2 million. It was a fully uprated of sorts to stiff me out of money, and I didn't want to take that line down. To say I was furious was an understatement. Anyway, the day he made that offer, I handed in my resignation. This sent the chief technology officer into panic mode because the CEO had refused an updated contract and I was still on a 1-month notice period. Plus, I had a lot of untaken paid leave. Basically, it meant I was walking out right then and there. So off I went that very same day, to the shock and surprise of everyone, I guess. The next day, I sent an official, registered letter requesting my overtime or back pay and received a negative response, which I followed up with another detailed demand. This was also rejected because the bonus was discretionary and there is no overtime. However, I'd been seeking legal advice, and I understood that they don't have a leg to stand on if I am willing to pay for an attorney. As the liability in such matters is firmly and 100% on the employer, I was willing. You need to understand that going to a lawyer was very rare in those parts back then, so companies didn't generally expect this outcome. Things have since changed. When going through the applicable laws with the attorney, I noticed there is a limitation of 7 years. So while my attorney was laying out what to do in order to get me my money as little as a few weeks, I just asked him, what if we wait until it's 6 years and 11 months after the transgression and then file demanding interest? I wanted this because the law stated that back pay is due at a 9% annual percentage rate above the base rate, 3.25% at that time, accrued daily for every day past the due date. We're looking at 12 to 12.5% compound daily annual percentage rate. The risk is that the company folds in that time, but I decided to take that risk. I sent one final letter stating that I expect all the owed and accrued amounts to date to be paid immediately. Of course, nothing happened. For the next few years, life rolled on. The company did grow and become a known player in the area. When the time came, I found an attorney and started the case. We had copies of all the communications, copies of the registered letters and responses. The back pay demanded now, including interest, was $112,000. What I didn't know was that in addition to this, that there are fixed penalties for each instruction to perform uncompensated overtime. The total demand was something like $135,000. To say that the CEO, who was still CEO, lost his asterisk would be an understatement. I got a very verbally abusive phone call, which I dutifully recorded, as it wasn't completely unexpected, and was added to the filing. The CEO fought, or tried to, but when the judge heard the phone call, he took an immediate dim view. Reading through all the communication just put more nails in the defense's coffin. The judge just ruled and instructed the company to pay immediately and without delay, and also ordered the company to pay all my legal costs. They also got a full audit from the Department of Labor. The company paid up a week later. To add insult to injury, the evening of the court's decision, the CEO apparently got very drunk and crashed his car into another vehicle while drunk. He got a DUI conviction and lost his driving license for half a year, and his insurance refused to pay out for the damages to his vehicle, brand new Mercedes S-Class, as he was drunk. All in all, a glorious day. Now for the advices. Guys, help me understand. Imagine you own a business. You have an employee who's driven and is performing consistently. His consistency has granted the company with constant cash flow. He's interested in the job. At what point would your mind be like, let's hoard everything for ourselves, including that which is legally payable to others? Is it just petty greediness? Even then, wouldn't it be in your selfish interest to let him be satisfied with the work to bring in more cash flow? How dare that underling think they are the reason for this company's success, or the reason for even part of its success? I'm the reason for its success. This company would be nothing without me. I'm going to screw that person just so they know their place. Too long. Didn't read. Narcissism and ego won't allow them to acknowledge anyone else's value, and psychopathic narcissists want to destroy anyone who takes the spotlight off of them. Story 3. My husband is cheating on me, but he doesn't know I know. I got bored at 2 a.m. one night and decided to go on my husband's phone out of boredom while he was asleep. I expected to just see cute photos he took of our family and things like that, but ended up finding out he's been cheating on me for 11 months. It's insane because he acts normal like nothing changed. Still looks at me in the eyes every day like everything's great, and nothing happens, so I didn't expect this at all. Last thing I would think to happen, and I wouldn't even have found out unless if I checked his phone. I know people on Reddit are against going through spouses' phones, and sometimes I wish I didn't check his phone at all, so I wouldn't know, but sometimes I wish I knew earlier. What I found out on his phone: met a 22-year-old girl he was chatting up with at a cafe. Their first message was, "Hey, this is Chris from Cafe." They share nudes. He sent her money for gas when they went out on another date. They also been having screw at her college apartment. She lives across campus. From the messages, it seems like it's horrible and not emotional. I found out he thinks I'm ugly and he hates my mom belly. I didn't even know he thought I was unattractive and fat because we still have screw, and he still tells me I'm beautiful. Wow, so two-faced. I saw his Reddit account. He comments on those rate me subs, and he leaves thirsty comments. And sometimes he messages these girls on Reddit validating their beautiful looks. This just is so disappointing in all levels. We have 2 small kids. I don't want to divorce him. I still love him. I don't want to separate our family. I want to stay. I can't compete with every man wanting a young 20-something girl. I have kids and I let myself go, and I spent most of my life with this man. He doesn't know I know about this. I just don't know where to start since I still plan to stay with him. I'm trying hard to forget what I saw, but it's been a week now, and I'm having nightmares about this woman and my husband. Edit to add, since I see people asking. Of course, she, the college girl, knows he's married. They talk about me in their messages. She just doesn't care he's married with kids. She's clearly just having fun. That's all for today. If you are enjoy this story, please like the video and share your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you.